everyone, it's Ruby and welcome back to my channel. Today's video has been very long awaited for me and I am so excited. So in today's video I'm going to be showing you my GCSE art work and sketchbook. Enchanté. So for me, art was definitely the GCSE that I put the most time into. It definitely paid off and I ended up getting a 9. I think personally I did work for that 9. I was so happy to have got it. I had to actually wait to show my whole family my final piece until about 3 weeks ago. The whole of summer I had to wait because it was obviously with the examiners and I was not allowed to get it until after the October half term. So when I got it, you can imagine seeing it all after months. It was like crazy the amount of work that there was and I was just like, wow. Anyways, this video I've wanted to film for a long time because number one, I know a lot of my following obviously have followed me and my family doing art on our channels and stuff like that throughout time, and also I've shared with you doing my art and all of this on my YouTube, so I feel like the outcome I was always going to show you guys. Also, I know a lot of my followers are taking art GCSE and throughout this I will give a couple tips that I have of trying to aim for higher grades or do well in it from my experience. But yeah, today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the art, all of the sketchbook, all of the work I put in to get the grade 9. So for GCSE art, as any other subject, there are different exam boards. My school took OCR and they chose out of the art and design fine art, which honestly I think was the best one for them to choose because that is my favourite. So I'm very happy that that was what I took. And it's split into 2 components. So you have component 1 and component 2. The full mark for both components adds up to 200 marks and I got 192. So I was absolutely stunned to hear that. I was literally 8 marks off full marks and I was like, wow, that is just such a good grade. And I was so proud of myself. So component 1 is marked out of 120 marks and that is 60% of your grade. You have to basically create a portfolio of work and that includes coursework, sketchbook work and a final outcome. Your coursework is the build up to your final piece. It all has to add up and it all has to be little build ups which complete to the final piece. So you need to make sure throughout when you're doing your sketchbook and your coursework, it's all little pieces which kind of piece together and then your outcome is all of that put together. One thing that I wish I knew in my sketchbook is that it didn't need to be perfect. I started my sketchbook and I was just too perfectionist on it. I wouldn't get much done in it because I would take too much time in it when really it's meant to be your brain and your thoughts put into the sketchbook. It's just parts that you're thinking about when building up your pieces. So this is my sketchbook. I did still life as my theme and that was basically just like objects photographed and then you paint it. My artist that I chose was Suzanne and that was very much kind of abstract looking painting, which was my favourite type. I definitely think for component 1 you should pick your strongest like material to use. So for me it was painting. If it's drawing then that can be fine. You've got the title page. This is immediately going into an inspiration page. At this point you kind of just want to shove your brain into your sketchbook. That's what I did. So for this I kind of was smart with it and I already knew I wanted Suzanne as my artist, so I put a little bit of her work in it. So it kind of is little links. You do want to write in your sketchbook. Please don't think that it's all just painting. You also need to kind of talk about everything in there, so make sure to add some writing in there if you can. Then a mood board. I recommend to anyone to do a mood board. It's fun to do but it's also a really good way of showing your like kind of train of thought with your pieces. I'm just going to scan through a couple pages. Anyone who's doing a sketchbook, you can get some kind of ideas from this. You're going to have to do an art history thing, so I obviously at this point chose Suzanne and I wrote about different pieces, what I like about them, how I think this could be in my final piece and then what I do with that in my final piece. I sometimes would do keywords on the side if I kind of like something about it, then replicating pieces of art. This kind of shows skill sets at finishing a piece of art. I didn't actually end up finishing this side, but it didn't matter because it showed that it was kind of a build up. You don't need to have every page finished. This, close-ups of work is a really good thing to add. Little examples. I really enjoy doing this type of thing, which is like shades. It just showed that you could do shading with pencils. One thing that the exam board is going to want to see is that you can use different materials, so painting, pencils, pens, watercolor. It's really a good idea in your sketchbook to like use different type of things. So obviously there's painting in here, but there's also using pencils, different shading pencils to show I can do that. I think I've got watercolor in here at some point. This is really cool. And at this point then you start kind of adding together your final piece. This is using different techniques. And then you just kind of start adding it all together, and at the end I put a little photo that I put together. This was the inspiration for my final piece, and I wrote about it. All you want to make sure to remember is it needs to develop throughout. Like it needs to go from ideas to adding them ideas to beginning your final piece, and how your artist is included in that final piece. They're probably the key things of advice I'd give to someone. First, I'm going to show you my paintings. These are Coke cans. I liked how it also wasn't too defined, so it looked like it was like a development piece, kind of blocked out work, because it doesn't always need to be finished. It can be a piece of like train of thought, if you get what I mean. This was a artist copy of Suzanne. This was actually really smart because this ended up being added into my final piece, so you had that link. This is another Suzanne, and this is a close-up of a flower. This is the other painting. I think this actually might be one of my favorite ones from the first one. Now this, I think, was actually the first piece of work I ever did in art GCSE, and it was just a beans can. Obviously it has nothing to do with my final piece, but sometimes you can sneak in a couple of just showing off your skill, and I really think this was quite a nice drawing, and it's probably the best drawing I did in the end, so I added it in general. You've got this Coke can. This is pen. I decided to do a pen as well to show a whole different medium. This is a coloured drawing of a flower. Lots of Coke can drawings and glasses. This is kind of giving you a sneak peek to what I ended up putting in the final piece. And then I've got another one that this has nothing to do with it either, but showing that you can do different kinds of drawing types is also really good. And this was drawn in the style of Suzanne, which is why I put it in as well. Now onto my final piece for component 1. I actually did 2 mini final pieces and then my final piece in the actual exam. You don't have to do that. I would recommend doing a mini final piece just because it shows all the objects you want in the final piece, but then you have your actual real final piece, which is clearly better, so you have that contrast of like, this was how I wanted it then, but then I changed my mind and I developed it further, and that's always good to have. Which one was the first one? This was the first one I did. I liked this a lot. I actually at the time was like, I don't want to change anything. I spoke to my teacher and there was definitely room for development because this area obviously is quite bland. There could be more in it, so I did that one. I did this and I added this in, which was a different material. I don't think it sat as nicely. I wasn't a fan of the composition in this, but I did add in that Suzanne painting, which linked to my artist. That was the second one. Then my final piece, this was it. As you can see, it's better than them two, which is the hope that you want. I ended up adding in like an actual wooden beam as a frame, which I feel like was such a good idea because it really brought it to life a bit. You always want to have something a bit, the only way I can say it's a bit weird and quirky in your work. I genuinely thought I was going into art and just gonna have like a proper classical piece of art, but I ended up having this sort of thing in, which I really think contributed, because having something a bit weird always adds to it. But yeah, that was my final piece. I do like this. Looking at it when I haven't seen it for a while, I am proud of that. So component 2 is very much similar to component 1, except the exam board gives you a series of different themes and you have to pick one from there. So in January, I think it was, we got our themes and there were loads of different ones. I can't really remember what they were. I remember that I picked, what did I actually pick? So the theme that I picked was garden. A lot of people picked that and I was a bit scared. I didn't know whether to change it, but for me, I wanted to, and was told to pick my strengths, because component 2, you have, I think it's like 8 weeks, you have a lot less time to do all of your work than component 1. I always have been into like drawing nature and stuff like that, so I think I could have come up with more ideas with that than anything else. For this, I have so much more work than the other one. Probably didn't need that much work, but this was one I was really like very passionate about getting a high grade, so I put so much work into it. I think my sketchbook helped me come up with ideas more. I knew from the get-go what artist I wanted to do. I wanted to do Monet, and I ended up doing Monet in the style of Impressionism. I loved his work. This was my title, Gardens. My sketchbook very much was similarly laid out with both ones. You kind of get the gist that you do a mood board for both type thing. Then artists who painted gardens. I'm just gonna scroll through. I really liked this. This was a brainstorm, and I feel like this is really nice because there's a lot of writing here, but it also shows train of thought, and a lot of this has stuff that I put in my final piece. I think this was really smart to do. This is talking about different impressionism. So as you can see, before I even wrote in my sketchbook, I knew what I wanted to do, just because I didn't want stuff to not link. Stuff like this is really cool to add in if you want to add little like flippy things. They're quite interesting. This. I also went to the Monet Museum as well, and I saw pieces of Monet, and I just wanted to put that in. You don't need to do that obviously, but I thought it linked quite nicely. As you can see, it's quite similar to my other one, there's just a lot more in it. This is developing my final piece. I kind of got a photo of my inspiration photo and just kind of dissected stuff in it. That's quite a good idea to do. And then again with this one, I don't know if you need to do this, but I liked doing it, and I put my final piece on the back page. I did do an artist poster for component 1, but I don't know where it is. It wasn't that good anyway, so you're not missing out. Look. Don't know how that happened, but this is my artist poster. It's quite basic actually. There's not much to it, to be honest. I should have done this a bit better. So I have quite a lot of pieces of art that I handed in for my component 2, and that definitely, I think, gave me the grade. I think at this point my skill had got better. I knew what my strengths were, and I think Impressionism definitely was where I came into my own, because I love that style of painting, and I really think I was better than the sort of still life type of painting. Most of these are things that are either artist copies of Monet's work, or they're little pieces or objects that I ended up putting into my final piece. This bench, which I love. I actually went to like a gardens in Cornwall and this was there. So I took a photo and then painted it in the style of Impressionism. This is Musée Monet. This I think was really good as well because it added kind of bright colours and little things like having bright colours in it which are in your final piece. So like if you did a piece with bright colours, that can be a link for your final piece. Close up of flowers, which I took photos of. I definitely again had more paintings than drawings, but I did a lot more drawings this time, which I took time on. This was probably one of my favourite pieces I did in general. Like it comes close to my final piece for me. I absolutely love this. I did this on a canvas because it's nice and different from doing it on paper. Flower. This is an artist copy. These are little ones which I did on cardboard. A bit 3D. This, I really love this one actually. This is the full picture of the bench. This is the famous water lily painting which I tried to recreate. I loved this. I found that really fun to do. I loved Monet and I loved Impressionism, so I actually enjoyed doing my work a lot more. Like I picked something I loved. So another artist's copy, and then this is his other one. For drawings, I didn't have that many, but I don't think I needed that many because I had so many paintings and most of my final piece, all of it was painting anyways, so it didn't really make a difference. This is a coloured drawing. These are drawings and paintings together, just kind of put up. These are little ones. I don't want to give them as like one. These are my main drawings. The area which kind of was in my final piece, very similar to it. And this was the water lily and kind of a drawing. There is some pen in here as well as pencil. And that's all my pieces and coursework for it. Now onto my 10-hour exam for my final piece. This was definitely a long time of work and thinking. I'm going to show you my mini one first. This was it. So for me, this one I really loved. I liked how it was nature. Obviously it connected to the theme. It was in the style of Impressionism. It all added up in a way, but I got told, I think my teacher told me this, and so did my parents when they saw this. They said that this area here, like, I feel like it needed something else. It needed a bit more. Number one, it didn't have a different medium in it, and it didn't have the, I don't know what the word is, like, kind of just something that kind of brought your eye a bit, and it didn't have enough history, I thought, in. So with my final piece, I added a couple things to it. And this is my final piece. I was very proud of this. The examiner, I think after, said something to me about it. I can't remember what it was, but it was really sweet. So I added in the bench. As you can see, the bench was a last minute thought and I did the paintings of the bench last minute, but I loved this and I started draping the flowers over it. It's got here a little photos of Monet paintings. I thought that was a really nice addition to it, like kind of scattered on the ground. Here is the Museum Monet, and then this is the Louvre, and I thought that was actually quite smart because I incorporated a real piece of like history and art which kind of connected to my artist in a way, but it all added together. But that was my final piece. I was so proud of this in the end. Obviously all my family do art and all I ever wanted for art GCSE was to be able to do a piece that I did all on my own and I was proud of. I did all of this just in the exam on my own. I didn't have any help with it, which is why I was very, very happy. That is my final piece and that is all of my artwork for my art GCSE. I hope that any advice I gave you in this video helped. Honestly, at the end of the day, just enjoy doing art GCSE. Looking back on it, I really loved doing it. I thought that it was really interesting and it was really fun to learn about different artists and art movements and stuff like that. Yeah, that's all my artwork from art GCSE that got me a 9. I'm not actually taking it for A-level because I felt that GCSE was enough for me and I don't want to do art in the future anyways, so I was happy stopping there with it. But I definitely want to get back into doing some paintings because I can still do it as a hobby. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Yeah, thank you so much for watching and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!
Enchanté.